certainly don't want to in some way not have this as an obligation for us to make sure and be the ones that are checking up on this. The fire commission in our resolution for the fire commission, we do state that, but I don't know if it was as clear as it needed to be in our actual contract. So that's one of the things, if you just take third quarter and you're looking at what would be provided by the departments. Fourth quarter, you see in there that they'll provide the IRS 990 document and documentation for capital purchases, improvement, equipment replacement, and all other uses of district funds, which is the fire tax, to the county. Additionally, all action taken to achieve a higher fire rating. That may be nothing. Yeah, go ahead.
I ask a question here.
Sure.
The 990.
Yeah.
How current is that supposed to be when they give it to us?
April, I don't know how far behind is that?
It's usually a year behind, because with the budget process, with this current budget process, most people provided a 2023. Yeah, because I think, I'm doing this by memory, but I think they have 6 to 9 months a nonprofit does to file that 990 or to get that in place.
When I was thinking about the rescue squad was a
Yeah, it was a 2023.
23.
And that is mostly what we
Kind of
received.
looking at year and a half, 2 years, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the most current. I don't know if there's anything that we can do otherwise, for that. So, I mean, we could alter the language. You could add in there the most current, but then a certification from the fire department that they've maintained their status, or something else. This is just a draft for you guys to take a look at and figure out what other language, or do you want to change how it reads? Do you want to move things in these quarters? I'm thinking about, these are conversations that we've had where we realized that we were deficient and we weren't asking for things, and things happen and we're like, oh, well, maybe we should have that, or maybe we should do things a little bit differently on how we're handling our contracts. And then timing of the payment would be contingent on the compliance, and we're doing it quarterly. So that language has been changed to say it'll be paid quarterly, but it's contingent on the compliance with the requirements per each quarter. So like I said, some of them are super easy, and it's just probably a paper or two that they'd be giving us, and then everything's fine. They're in compliance. So obviously, you guys take a look. Those 4 are probably going to be the biggest change out of the document. Use of the funds is the same. Obviously, I've just tried to maybe elaborate slightly on, the language of what the permissible use of it is. Obviously, we still are not using it for paid firefighters. It's just for their equipment and things that they're using to operate. Payments and stuff, if they raise money through fundraising, that's fine. They can use that for whatever they want, but our funds should not be used for that purpose. And then I think the guidelines, when you go into number 6, I did change A. If you look on page 3 up at A, so from several contracts that I've seen for different counties, one of the things that they do require that the county have a copy of would be documentation to prove that the nonprofit is in compliance with the general statutes for North Carolina. So I've added that. Then that there's not all necessary filings. I will have to tell you, with the Secretary of State, once you do file your initial and you get your approval to be a nonprofit, you never have to file anything with the Secretary of State again. Really, your annual requirement is going to be with the IRS. It's not the state of North Carolina. But so in the second part, I've just said that they'll make all necessary filings with the Department of Revenue and the Internal Revenue Service. That's where you're maintaining your status. It's not with the Secretary of State. if you're a regular corporation or LLC, you're doing that annually, but not as a nonprofit. Once is all you have to do. But they'll also provide a copy of bylaws to us. I actually don't know if we have a copy of everybody's bylaws and what they say. I think we've talked about that and we have nothing. So,
I'm aware
I mean, I think that's important for us to know how each department is operating. You know, it's just your general stuff of, you know, what their structure is going to be, you know, chief or assistant chief, who's the secretary, treasurer, is that combined, you know, when they're going to have their meetings, you know, how they're going to be operating, you know, with their finances. I mean, all the normal things that I think it's pretty, I mean, I say obvious, but we haven't asked for it before. These are things that we should know because we're providing the funding by our collection of the tax. So, and if they make changes, you know, through time to their bylaws, that they would provide an updated copy to the county. I'd say that's probably not likely to happen because that's kind of another document, like with the Secretary of State. Once you've done it, you don't really go back and change it a bunch of times. But if it does change and get updated, then we would be notified. Same thing on a B is the same. C is the same, except for I think I've added that, you know, basically I don't think we can go lower. And Bill, you might know about this. I don't think you can go lower than 9A for the rating. Is that the lowest you can go, or is there?
So you can go, I believe the goal was to get everybody to a 6.
I mean, can it go worse?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't
So
think so.
I think it's basically just saying, hey,
Yeah,
you know, you have to maintain the worst rating at least. I don't know if it can get any worse than that or how that would work. But obviously we want it to get better. And I know that there's some things that could be done, but I'm just not sure how easy it's going to be to get a better rating. But obviously in one of these requirements during the quarter that, you know, you're telling us where, like what you're doing to get a better rating, like have you checked out additional access points with the county, or, you know, like what's happening to get a better rating. Let's see. Training is the same. That's nothing different. Workers' compensation. Is that the only insurance other than they would have to maintain their own property insurance, right?
Yes.
And is there anything else other than workers' comp that they have to provide? I didn't think that there was anything. And I didn't.
I thought they paid in the retirement for the firemen, do they?
Well, that's not insurance.
Insurance, right.
Yeah.
So for insurance, I was, you know, I don't know, maybe we should say something about their property insurance too, because, you know, if something happens to a building and there's no insurance on the building, I mean, that'd be
That's
pretty
true.
devastating. That might be something to add there, you know, where they're required to maintain it, not necessarily that they're giving us a copy of it. It's just something we want to make sure that they're maintaining their insurance, one, for any injuries that any of their volunteers might have, but then two, you know, make sure they're maintaining their building. So that might be something we add. It's not that we're checking, it's just that they're agreeing that they're going to do it. Now, if you wanted any part of this that, you know, you don't have to tell me now, just something you think about and say, you know, send me back feedback and tell me if there's something else that's in here that you either do like as a requirement or you don't like as a requirement. You know, let me know, because you know, this is just, I'm thinking about it from my notes and what April had note wise. What did we say that we were thinking about? I think the fire rating was probably the most important one, because, you know, we want to do whatever we can. And if it's possible, I know Piney Creek is not as easy to try to figure out additional access points for water. So that they may kind of be in a position where they can't do much about the fire rating. But if there's a possibility that we want them to explore it. So we thought, well, let's just add that in there and then say, tell us what you're doing for your rating. How are you moving it forward to see if you could get one? I don't.
We're all working to that.
Yeah,
goal,
I
you
think
know,
so.
yeah,
And
right.
once we get to a point where everybody's got the rating, just say that they maintain it.
There's 3 or 4 hoops you have to jump to get
Yeah.
to that point. But
Yeah.
we're all working on that.
It helps everybody if they're, you know, your homeowner insurance can
All
be.
smarter don't have to deal with that. But You're in
Yeah.
town anyway.
And I actually just got a message from David Spicer. 9S is the lowest rating. If you get to a 10, you can't provide services.
So we just say
A
9A.
10 is like not having fire protection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I heard 10
Thanks,
somewhere,
Dave.
but I was like, I don't think that's going to work. And we certainly wouldn't say that because then I don't think we're going to be providing services. um, let's see. I don't think anything changed in F. Nothing changed with G. I might change the letters, but I didn't change what was in them. It didn't change anything in H. Let's see. I don't think anything in I. It might be subtle, like I've changed a word or something here and there. And if you need, we do have the old fire contract that, we can send you that would be a good comparison if you need it. So just let me know. And if you're shaking your head, yeah, I'll just send you the old one so you
We're
can
gonna
see
get a
it.
lot of questions.
I know.
If you
Well,
got the old contract to back up on, and
each fire department should have the old one because they've signed them every year. So, and I think the last update was 22.
No, the last
23.
update was we started in July, but everybody didn't get them signed till like September. Yeah.
But did we change anything?
Do we have anything in
AUP.
here?
Okay.
Do we have anything in here that says you need to have her?
By July
Yes.
1, we
July 1.
had discussed that. Now,
Did I put that in there? Let's see.
I don't remember it off the top of my head, but we did discuss that we needed them, but
Really
by
need to do
July
it.
1.
It's crazy. We have contracts come in 6 months after our budget year.
Yeah.
So that would be in the second quarter. So we need to add that signed contract.
In the second quarter.
Yeah, so that would be
Going fiscal
under number
year.
4, under second quarter, we're going to put signed contract. Is an additional
Fiscal year.
requirement. So in order to get your second payment it would actually be the last of the year.
We actually,
Should-
what we talked about at the fire commission meeting was actually just doing it by July 1. They have to have them signed by July
it's a
1.
fiscal year.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you want to change this contract so that it begins at the fiscal year?
That's what we did last time.
It
So,
won't give us enough time this time since we're working on this. To get it turned around and in the hands of the fire department so they can go over.
Well, I think if we can get or if Heather's can get some feedback and kind of narrow down what the board's questions are.
we can have it by July 1.
Yeah.
But
They need it by 1st of June.
oh yeah, no, I think we're good because as long as you tell me if you got any changes or updates. But what I'm saying is, I know we're talking about fiscal year versus calendar year. Do I need to change the quarters to match a fiscal year, or should I just leave them the same, knowing that our fiscal year is starting at the third quarter?
My suggestion would be change it and have it go with our budget cycle. That would be my
The
suggestion.
quarters.
Yes.
So start
Mhm.
with the third quarter, fourth quarter, then the first, and then the second. Switch the order of the quarters.
Order.
Okay. You got it.
So my question is, Bill may know this, but I know they talk about they don't get the information in time to get it to the meeting. So how many they have just one meeting a month? Fire department?
That's what we actually, every other month.
So you're
It's a
every other
different
month.
schedule. Some of them's every month, some's every other. We got one coming up in May. So the next will be July, but you can call a meeting anytime.
Yeah. So if they have a fire contract that needs to be done by July, they can make that work. And this is board of directors.
Yeah,
Is that who
well,
does
your
that?
fire chief's got to be on too, but if they could call a meeting, that ain't no problem, really.
We'll try to get it done, this month, and then
So-
they can have it.
Yeah, and I think it should have plenty of time, but I could understand if it's a little bit touch and go this year, but after this year, they know, and we got plenty of time. to get it out. They got plenty of time to get it approved.
I don't think that our intent is to change it all the time. This was just, there were things that have happened that caused us to go revisit this because we realized we were not being effective with what we were requiring during the year. And there were things that we missed, and we need to cover how the fire service is handled in the county and have something in writing with the fire departments to be clear about what the expectation is for collecting that fire tax.
Didn't change anything.
We added the AUP, which is agreed upon procedures, which is the desk audit. Yes.
And that's
That was
still,
added last year.
The deal is you can go back the year before and then we're still getting the fire contracts in 6 months later.
yeah.
Correct.
The
Been
same
that way every
information
year,
every year.
right?
It's been that
So
way.
the point is,
since
they
the
may come up
inception.
with that excuse this year, but the thing is, I don't really have a good excuse not getting them to us.
Well, that was another reason why we said we need metrics, because then your money, we may have collected the tax, but your funding is based on you hitting these metrics and providing information and documentation.
And it's a very low expectation, to be
Right.
honest.
Right.
Is there any English in there, if like you just talked, we ain't gonna be changing this every year?
No.
But I, for myself, and you can see what the rest of the gang, I would be in favor of a automatic renewal. We wouldn't have to do no signature, just automatic renewal.
Yeah, but the
next year.
problem with that though is how this all works. You know, if they're not in compliance with the metrics, then you don't want it to renew. You got a problem. What's going on as to why that metric hadn't been met? Well, if it automatically renews, you're just moving right on and you're not addressing that being an issue.
Provided they've met all the metrics, of course. I just thought saved one seat. You know, every year. If they've met the metrics, you know.
I mean, it's up to you guys. You know, I'm always a little hesitant. You know, here a good example was the Register of Deeds just got a contract, and in the contract it automatically renewed. But then what was it? 2 years, the contract jumped like $30,000, and I was like, we are not going to go with that, because there's no way I would be agreeable to allow an automatic rollover for something like that. That's crazy talk. I mean, that was just on the money part, and it gave me pause. I don't know. I mean, what would you think about something like that? I mean, I don't see us changing it. There's been one change in the last couple of years. Anyway, I mean,
I need to understand a little bit about the volunteer of the fire department not meeting one of the criterias. Then we can hold some of that tax money, but not indefinitely.
right, but
They
you-
can go back and correct or answer the question, and then the money is
right.
given to them.
But because we contract with the fire departments, we're in a different situation. It's not we're not paid departments. They're volunteer, they're nonprofits. So we have the fire commission, and that's one set of requirements that have to be met. But when they're contracting for the fire service for their district to collect that tax, a little bit different circumstance. We're saying you have to meet what these requirements are in your contract in order to get your funding. So yes, that is okay for us to do. We just have to have them agree to that. And
So it's just a temporary slap on the wrist
well, it's just funding.
until they comply with all the qualifications. But
If you,
eventually they get all their money.
yeah, but if you look, I mean, there's nothing onerous on here. I
Things
mean,
that they should be doing anyway.
right. It's stuff that we've asked for in the past that we're just quantifying when it is due and then changing the payments to correlate with these requirements.
So are we really gonna hold this up if vote on it, if they don't get the paperwork in? Are we gonna back it up and hold their money?
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
If it's in writing and says, if you don't have your,
And if they don't sign it, you don't get no money, so.
no, I mean, that's one of those.
which is why I thought, well, should the timing be, different? Because I'm trying to remember what Rita said about the timing for what we put on those tax bills. There's a deadline that she has to have something that's going to be added or changed on that tax bill. And I don't remember what the date was.
She sends out the tax bills prior to August 1st, I believe, because August is the discount month. So, yeah, she does have a hard deadline to
For
get.
the software people, like she has to tell them when to change something before those bills get issued. So maybe we need to figure out from Rita the deadline for that, because if we haven't had compliance, I mean, the worst case scenario is you end up with a zero tax, that nothing's collected for your fire department, which that's the harshest thing that could possibly happen in this whole scenario. So I don't know, maybe we change it so that,
But that's still going to run on fiscal year.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So if we just, it might make us change having, that signed contract. Maybe we move it up into, the third quarter of the fiscal year instead of it being, you have to have it by July 1. Well, if we got to know when to put information on that tax bill, we should have it earlier, like have it by the end of March, not
With
by,
their budget.
yeah. So that we change it slightly so that we're not,
We
we're
can
not
put it on the budget cycle.
yeah, we're not pushing ourselves so tight so that if they weren't in compliance, we'd know real quick and say, hey, you're not going to get any funding if you don't sign your contract. So we might move that. I think that's probably a good idea.
And insurance on the buildings in there too, right?
Yeah, I'm going to add that so that is one of those. It goes with their insurance.
Do you have any provisions in this document controlling general liability insurance for the fire departments?
No, because that's typically going to happen when they have their insurance on the building for their building. And then it would generally be part of, like if they had, for the trucks and stuff, they have insurance there, you're going to get a liability part with that also. Workers' comp's not for, that's for a different type of liability. So sometimes people request like million, or 2 million on a liability part of your policy. But it typically comes with a policy. So whether it's a vehicle or whether it's a home or a business policy, you get a liability component.
If they're getting property or vehicle insurance, is there something that expresses that the organization is covered if a member of the fire department potentially injures somebody trying to rescue them, and are they covered in that aspect?
I think they probably are, depending on how much they have on their policy. I don't know. I've not looked at anybody's individual policy, so I don't really know. And the only one you see, April, is probably the workers' comp.
We don't see any of those from the fire department.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
we're asking.
Yeah, we don't get
Now.
anything,
Showing their coverage.
correct. Not right now.
Well, see, that's why we're changing this, because we feel pretty strongly at this point that there needs to be some metrics that we see that things are being handled, that that the county doesn't end up being left holding the bag for something that, we may not be liable under our insurance policy, but that doesn't mean we won't have to submit a claim and then have to go through that whole process and have an issue with our, rates being changed because we had to make a claim for something that, we're not going to ultimately be responsible for, but they noted on our policy. So, us having that is a good thing.
As far as the metrics of the document are concerned, I would say that for it to be more enforceable or for it to carry more weight, would it make sense, or what the rest of the board feels, that would it make more sense to say that, we can't issue the first payment unless we have a signed document or a signed contract in hand? Like if we don't have the signed contract, then we don't have an agreement.
Yeah, which is why I think moving it up so that it's during that January, February, March period where we're starting to talk about budget, that it be moved up to that timing. And then we say signed contract in that section. So that would be the first quarter. Obviously it's, I'm going to change the way that the quarters look because of our fiscal year, but yeah, make it earlier so that is one of the requirements that we have to have in order to move forward with their budget.
So we can go ahead and get them to sign this contract now and start over again the first of the year with.
Yeah, but for the next coming
Next year,
year,
yeah.
right? So that it will coincide with budget.
I got you.
Yeah.
What is the length of the current agreements that we have? When do they
Year.
expire?
1 year.
Within the fiscal year right now? Okay,
Everybody knows they're coming.
right.
And we've talked about what we're going to change and put some metrics in there and go to quarterly payments. So they've heard that, but you know, this will be the first time that they actually look at a contract that has different language in it.
If they sign the contract by March, when is our cutoff to change the contract? We gotta be behind.
We're just going to
March.
end up, yeah, it would be the same time that they're signing theirs. We're signing too, but it's for the upcoming fiscal year. So we're kind of signing it in advance, you know, of the new year. But in trying to switch all of these things over to the fiscal year so that we have things that happen at the beginning instead of during the year, which try to remember all these dates and stuff, it just makes it easier for the county to remember when stuff has to be done. So I think we tried to switch everything over to fiscal as much as possible. Same thing here. We just need to change the timing of it, I think.
And then it would just be incorporated into the budget process.
So March 31st?
Yeah. So the end of that, by the end of that quarter,
Okay.
which is the first quarter on the calendar,
Yeah.
but it's going to end up being the third for our fiscal year. So we've got in there, I mean, we can expand.
Just wait till she finishes.
Okay.
Go ahead, finish.
No, you go ahead because I know exactly where I am.
I had a question on number N. The very last few words, meeting of a public body to the same extent as the county. All their records are public records. All their meetings are open meetings. The only time that can they exclude the public from any type of meeting? Would the personnel or finances?
I don't know how detailed they get in their meetings. I mean, but I would figure, you know,
Have a closed session. I don't know.
Right.
I wouldn't think your public would be in on a closed session, and there is minutes.
yeah. And I
Well,
think,
it says there to follow chapter 143, article 33, the state government. And just reading through it, I'm no lawyer, that's why you're here. I didn't see any provision in there for a closed session.
I don't think it precludes that. I don't have that in front of me to go back and take a look, but I can look at it and see what it says.
I just know
about-
some people
closed.
in the public have complained that that some fire departments hold a meeting and people aren't, the general public's not privileged to those meetings. If they're have to follow the state law the same as we do.
Well, that's just us contracting. And that was one of the reasons why I added that in there, because I wanted it to be similar. Now, it's not going to be 100%, I don't think, but you know, there may be other requirements that they don't have to comply with. But generally speaking, when you're doing meetings, we don't do like executive meetings, you know, like we're talking about our board where it's just the board meeting. They're open. Anything we talk about is an open, you know, session for us, unless it's specifically closed for the purposes that we can statutorily close meeting. But I think making it so that it would be meetings of a public body and making it similar, then that gives that ability to the public, which I don't know, may or may not have been something that has been done in the past, but that was something that we had talked about. So I'll just look back at it and see exactly what it says, because I don't remember exactly what it said on closed sessions, or I can't think of it. I didn't print that part to bring it today, so I didn't think about that. But I'll look and I'll let you know. That's a starred section. So I'll go back to E. Okay, this is where we're talking about insurance. So it just says that they'll carry workers' compensation insurance, but do you want me to also qualify and add, because Garrison, you've mentioned this, so you want me to add in there that there would be property and casualty insurance, and then, a vehicle insurance policy so that it's clear that that's the expectation that they would have these policies.
If that's the standard across the state, then I would support that. I was just curious about what the standard was across the state. If that's a standard that everybody else is doing, I think we should be on board with that.
Sure, if there's any specific statute on point that would require somebody to have insurance. I mean, I know you have to have vehicle. That is required. But I don't know about building insurance. I mean, that's a personal preference, and that's something, for any homeowner, if they didn't want to carry insurance on their home, they don't have to. That is not a requirement unless you have a mortgage, and then your mortgage holder is going to require you to have it. However, this is a different situation because the county is contracting for specific services. And if they don't have a building to house their equipment, I think we have an issue. Like, how are they going to provide fire services if they have nowhere to locate their trucks, or their equipment or anything else? So maybe because we're asking them to maintain it, which I clearly think they are. I don't know anybody who's not maintaining insurance on their building. I think every fire department has too much vested in their equipment and buildings to not have insurance if something happened to it. Because I don't think anybody would have the money in reserves to be able to rebuild a building that costs $1 million. I think it would be foolish of a fire department to not maintain some kind of policy for that. But this is for us if we want to require it. I know you'd have to on your vehicles, and workers' compensation is, I think, part of what is required by the fire marshal. But I mean, I could say that in here. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be surprised, and somebody's going to be like, well, we don't have any.
Liability on the vehicles and equipment only applies to a wreck, right? It does not apply if that building catches fire tonight and they don't have no insurance and it burns everything up in there.
Yes. Your vehicle's
You've got
not.
more money in equipment in them vehicles
Yeah.
than you do that building.
It's going to be
most likely.
expensive today to rebuild.
It'll be expensive to buy all that equipment too.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to have it on the vehicles because, like I said, there's too much money invested in all of their stuff to not have a policy that would cover if they had a fire. I mean, think about it. I think it would be. I mean, accidents happen, but still, it is more likely that there's a potential for an issue with the fire department. With having oxygen and other things that they might house. The gas and diesel fuel and other things that they've got at the facility, so that's definitely a risk for, fire services. So I don't know. I mean, I can add to that workers' comp and just say that, that we expect that they would have vehicle and building insurance.
You just mentioned something about a lot invested in the buildings, which the county has done over the years, basically. So it is an investment from the county taxpayers to some degree. So I don't know. I don't know that we would be out of line asking for some proof of insurance.
No, and it's proof of insurance. This was just the one specifically about workers' comp that they provided, but it does say proof of insurance earlier, but we could expand on this one just to say we have the expectation that they would carry these types of insurance. I think that's reasonable.
The only reason I even brought it up is I just feel like we should want our fire departments to be protected if they attempt to rescue somebody and that person gets injured in the process and wants to bring about a frivolous lawsuit and say, oh, I just want them to be protected at the end of the day.
Agreed. So having them show us, a policy would be a good idea.
Policy on all properties,
We can be sued anytime.
It would be
for
building
anything.
and
houses.
vehicle. I mean,
Commercial
yeah,
ability. I mean,
vehicle and building.
even equipment,
Yeah.
we see it on budgets every year, how much they spend on equipment. So there's a lot of taxpayers' money invested in their whole setup. And if they're not covered and something happens, again, I don't like to work on assumptions. As we know, some people get a little slack on stuff.
Well, which is why I wanted that list of the equipment with the expiration dates, because one, that's them being accountable to know what equipment they have and what their expiration dates are. But then it also lets us know for budgeting purposes, are they going to come and ask for additional funding from the fire tax, add a cent on or something because they have so much equipment expiring at the same time. That is an expense for them, and that would justify them coming and saying, hey, budgetarily, we're going to need more money because we have all this equipment, which is going to cost us X number of dollars to replace. So, I mean, it's not just us that would benefit. It would benefit them too, because now they have a central list for themselves.
And we do hear quite often in the budget meetings that they have expired equipment. And I know the commissioners that have served on that committee, they hear that quite a bit. So if we had that list and it was up to date, then we could kind of tell what was coming up for expired equipment or uniforms or, jackets, protection, whatever. We would kind of have a heads up on that.
First year, one fire department came in because they'd switched chiefs. They realized that all that stuff had ran out of date from the past leadership. And so then they got hit with all that. But that very point is, yeah, you could just get slack on it. Next thing you know, all your equipment's out of date.
If it didn't come in and just tell you it's out of date.
That's the other thing.
Yeah. And somebody needs to go out and check it.
And that's the point,
They
we're going to
do-
have
if
something
they
in
do
black
records.
and white. Yeah,
Yeah,
where
but
they
stuff they write
record.
down don't mean nothing though. Maybe somebody like Daniel Roten needs to go out and verify it or something.
But if it's wrote down and then they come back later and they say we need more money, we already took care of that. So there is a little bit of responsibility.
Well, the other thing, if you go, I think it's very similar. I don't think I've changed much if you go down. So F, G, H, I think I, J, those are the same. I don't think I've changed much, if anything, in those from the previous contract. What I did, I think I slightly altered this. I can't remember exactly what it was on the old one. But if you look at K, so the fire chief of each fire department shall submit to the Alleghany County manager a financial report, which shall include a line ledger of all revenue and expenses. The first such report is due by April 1st. I've just randomly put that. You could change that to whatever. If we're going to go on that first fiscal quarter, which would be like the third for our fiscal year, we could just say by March 31st. Now that's, I think, slightly different than what we might have asked for before.
I believe it was February 1st in the old contract
Okay.
because it kind of lined up with the budget. Yes.
So do you want to say that? I mean, would that make more sense to change it back?
Normally, the budget process the past few years, we have gotten like all the special appropriations and internal departments in first, and then we do the fire departments.
So March 31st wouldn't be out of line?
No,
Okay,
it's not
okay.
going to be out.
Well, and it goes along with the information that we're requiring by the end of that quarter anyway. So, I couldn't remember what I had changed because I know that we specifically have changed so that we're doing the desk audit. And then I did add some additional language coming up. Yeah, down here. So you might want to change this too. I just added it in there thinking, well, since we're making major changes, why don't we look at this? So L is different because that is that they would provide a plan to the fire commission by July 1 of how the department is reducing its fire rating. Now there's information that you're providing to the county, and I think I put the same date on that. Let me check. Yeah, I put in here, let me see. I want it to line up with what we're saying. I think that was the fourth quarter. So in that regard, it wouldn't be July 1. It would be It would be by December 31st, because that would be in the last quarter, which would actually be the second quarter of the fiscal year. So by December 31st, oh, I did put that. Wait a minute, where was I just looking at? Oh, the plan. Okay, submit the plan by July 31st or July 1st, but then submit a written report of how your progress has been done by December 31st. And that matches the quarterly compliance and what we're asking for by that point. Now, there may be nothing on it because there's nothing they can do. And at some point, that might not make any sense to keep in here. If the fire departments have all achieved the highest rating that they're going to be able to get because of their location and ability to go up in rating, or I guess down in rating, at some point, we're going to reach the maximum of what each district is able to do, because we just don't have resources to go beyond what, the lowest might be. So,
Is this a draft copy?
Yeah.
Have the fire department seen?
nope, just you guys. We're starting with you because I want you guys to look at it and say, are there things you do or do not like about it? Are there things you want to see, update, change, less restrictive, more restrictive? I mean, we're changing it. So let's get in what we feel is appropriate at this point.
We're trying to align this with our fiscal year. So we need to have a deadline that these fire departments need to go through this, come back to us with maybe some changes, and then have it signed before our budget year starts. Is that what you're looking for?
I
We
think
try.
we just need to go ahead and do it ourselves and hand it to them.
Well, I mean, this is, it's a contract. I mean, obviously they're providing a service. So, I mean, there is some, leeway that we're going to have to listen to, what's their opinion and what do they think? And, I mean, some of it, I would say, if they're worried about how it might be onerous for them to do or how the costs might affect them or something like that. I mean, I think, you need to be aware of that or hear it from them. It's just going to depend. I think overall it's not much more than what they should be doing already, but we're just asking for some things in writing that we haven't before. Let's see, M didn't change, I don't think. All right, now N was one that I took from another fire contract. So this one is new. Now, this one says that the county, the fire department will allow the county to inspect their books and records when the county wants. I don't think we've ever done that. We've never asked to do that ever before. Of course, this is county money. So, I just thought that was a good one from somebody else's contract that I saw. I was like, oh, we've never done that. And we've never asked to do that before. I know we're doing our audits. However, those are just in like alphabetical order and it doesn't come around for 5 years. So this is something that allows the county to say, you're getting county money from county taxpayers. You're asking us to budget that. Then we need to be privy to what you are doing with your budget.
That's the general ledger.
I can change it. It just says all books and records, but I can qualify if you need.
I believe it's always been that
Didn't a few years back, we asked one fire department for all?
For the general ledger, yes. But
Yeah,
I think this is actually covering like their minutes, and it would be any public information, I would think. Is
Yeah.
that kind of,
that's what I always heard. Any taxpayer go to the fire department and see the books. Supposed to be able to provide the information.
I don't think we've ever had it though in our contract.
I don't remember it when we first started anyway.
Let's see. So it was just qualifying and saying that we would be entitled to inspect their records, reports, rosters, corporate documents, list of officers, board members, all the stuff that you would typically expect for a nonprofit that you'd be able to inspect. But we've never said anything like this before.
I thought I saw, for example, general register someplace in here.
Yeah, I might have mentioned it a couple times, and that I don't remember if it was.
Bill, did you get the line item from each department? Expenditure?
We have that.
We have budgets from 4 of the fire departments, but one did not submit anything nor did show up for their meeting.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, we used to get, when we first started this thing, we used to get line items, every dollar that was spent, remember?
No, we did not get that from the fire departments. They haven't submitted any of that this year. We used to get
It used to be a
rosters,
requirement to.
and we used to get rosters also, but nobody's brought that information in.
So we haven't been asking specific templates for them to turn in so far.
We have a budget
Uh-huh.
template for them to turn in, but yes, in the current contracts, they are supposed to turn in a general ledger and a roster.
Okay.
And there's a few things, and there are dates with those, but
But I don't think it's
That's the fire tax dollars. That's not
correct.
donated money. That's only fire tax
That
dollars.
is correct.
I know we got them first couple, 3 years. Okay.
We haven't gotten them in a few years. Now, we did ask, I think it was 3 years ago, the budget process for everybody to bring a general ledger in, but we still didn't get all of them.
It needs to be in.
Yeah.
So I think we've got now the requirement for the rosters and, you know, that's in here. That is one of those requirements under the 4 different quarters. So if you want that language to be more, go back and just look at this one on, you know, you tell me if you think it's sufficient. It's on page 2 under number 4, those timing of first, second, third, and fourth quarter. You know, you review those because that's what we're requiring to be provided to the county for each quarter, regardless of timing of it, but it's for each quarter. So you look at that. That's telling to them and for us to know those are your metrics that you would meet in order to get your funding for each quarter. So that paragraph is new on N. Paragraph O is also new. Same thing, took that from another county's contract. And now I don't know if you want to require this or not, but this is that they'll have an audit report performed annually by a CPA of its funds. And then when they have the report, they'll provide it no later than 6 months following the close of each fiscal year. So that would be provided to the Sid County Fire Marshal. Do we have a county fire marshal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Daniel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that falls under.
I'm getting it confused with the commission.
Backing up to this first quarter,
Yes.
I don't see, is that really specifically says a line item expenditure sheet. It says background checks, addresses for each member, the roster, which is membership. The fire department must provide a proposed budget with an explanation of the intent for the use of fire tax funds.
If you want, we can change it and say line item.
Well, I just think that'd be a good thing going into the budget process. I mean, it worked good the other time. You could see what was being spent. What do you guys think?
So
April, you done the budget every year.
Oh, yeah, it's nice to have the general ledger so you
I
can
think
see
that's a
what's
good
being
idea.
spent. Yeah.
And see where their money's going and what's going on there, you know?
perfect. That's exactly what I'm asking for right now. You know, but I know it's not easy just to look right at it and tell me. You might have to digest it a little bit and then get back to me with comments. I mean, I understand that. Because there's a lot to take in under this contract. All right, so on that O, going back to O, which is on page 4, that's something new. And you just have to tell me if you know, if you're okay, you want that, do you not want it? You know, this is different than the county, you know, being able to inspect records. This is different than the audit that would be under the county done, you know, every 5 years. This is them doing an audit and then providing us with the results within a specific time frame.
I have no problem with it in there.
I think it's a good fiscal practice for nonprofits to have an audit.
If they get used to it every year, they know what to expect.
Yeah, now, but then the hesitancy with me was, what's the expense? I don't know. And that may be something that they bring up and say, okay, well, the expense of this is going to be X, Y, Z, and that has to now be budgeted, and that just takes a bit more money. So, I mean, I thought about that.
This is over and above the random 5-year
Yes,
rotation. they're on.
Exactly,
So this is every year.
exactly.
Well, they're gonna want the county to pay for that.
Well, but it's coming out of fire tax money.
That's true.
So
But it ain't budgeted if we,
I know, and that's why I said this one is new. So you have to tell me what you think about this.
I have no clue I don't have a problem if I have no clue what an audit costs myself.
I don't know. I mean, it's not the county,
Well,
but
our desk audit, what they call it AUP, is $4,000 on each fire department is what we're paying. So I would guess between 5 and 7 probably for a full audit of a volunteer fire department. Just going with the funds that they are receiving.
yeah, I knew that was going to come up, and that's why I wanted to point that one out. So, I mean, you just have to think on what you want to do about that. Do you want it? Now, I know other counties are requiring it, which is why I said, well, I'm going to put in some of these things that they're doing because we're changing this. So we should think about it.
The counties that are requiring it, well, how are they, who's footing the bill?
I don't know. It's not in the contract. So,
Ashe County is doing it every other year and they're footing the bill.
The county or the fire department?
The county is, yes. Because I know Laurel Springs last year went through Ashe counties and they're going to provide us with that audit, but the county paid for it.
Well, I think we do. If we're the ones requiring the second audit, when we are, I would think
about
that'd
the
be our,
What do you think about doing it every second year rather than every year?
well, but
Got a random one,
right, every 5 years. So then you wouldn't ask for it in the year that they were already included in the audit.
Right?
So we could change the language of that. They don't have, and there's no requirement to provide any of that information to the IRS. I think they just give their information like on a form and fill that out and then, yeah.
Right.
So that's not an audit. So not my decision.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
You had a thing in here about the bylaws to be submitted to the commissioners. What if they make a change in their bylaws during the year,
It says that they would provide those within 10 days of making the change.
10 days?
Yeah. I mean, we can make it longer, but I mean, I just think if you're changing them and you just voted and you've approved them, then it's pretty easy to then just get a copy to the county. So I did say that.
And if you look on page 4 at item K, is that what I was referring to earlier about a ledger?
Yeah, I think yeah. Because I tried to look back in the other one and I didn't see it, but yeah. Now, if you wanted, I mean, I think we're changing that one section enough that it would include that information, for that first quarter to include the line item general ledger. So yeah, okay. Now you'll see on O where you see that general statute says that there's, and I didn't print it and I should have, I can send you a copy of it so you can take a look at it. We did run into that being an issue on our first audit. And that was, unless you contract with the fire department that they would be subject to the county's audit, then that's waived. Meaning you can't make them do it unless you contract for them to do it. So remember that when they're signing this contract, regardless of what audit, they have to do the audit that the county has every 5 years. So that's part of it, which is why I've included that language to waive that section. Because that did come up and that was a little bit of a contention between the fire department's attorney and us. So that is something, if we're going to require it, that's why it has to be in here. If we're not going to require it, then obviously we don't list it here as one of your requirements because they don't have to do that. That statute, if you look specifically at it, it says that it's not required. So I kind of feel like any nonprofit would, but I think the legislatures looked at it a little bit differently. Maybe for them, they were looking at it as onerous or something for a volunteer fire department, not necessarily that they were in a tax district where they were getting a specific amount of money on a tax from the taxpayers. I don't really know what their thought was on that, why it was waived. Mutual aid, same thing. Didn't change anything on that. Wasn't necessary. And I just want to make sure we said no later than March 31st, not March 1st. So I'll change that on that number 8 because I want it to match.
Okay.
Of what they would provide. And I said previous years, 990. I don't know if that's available because obviously we've gotten some that are at least a year, maybe 2 years old.
And we can just say most current
Yeah.
IRS 990.
Yeah. Let's see. And obviously we're saying that they're going to use the budgeted funds based on what it was budgeted for. And alterations of that amount needs approval of the commissioners. So if they come with, their line item of this is what they're going to be spending that money on, then that's what we expect them to spend the money on. If they alter that, then they have to come back and get approval to alter it. I don't think, we don't have to do any kind of like a vote on the line item. It's just them coming back saying that they're altering their budget. We're just approving a specific amount for them. So I'm not really sure how that would work.
Yeah, because we wouldn't, unless there's additional money that comes in with the fire tax, which does happen. And we do amend the budget at that point for any
Yeah.
additional.
But that's us doing it.
That's us.
That's not them. So I don't know. I'm not really sure how we'd be able to handle that. This was another county and I was using what they thought, what they had. And I'm now understanding what they're providing to the county for how they're doing their budget. So I'm not really sure how we would enforce that if they're going to make a change. How do we know if they're going to make a change? We don't, because we're not approving line items. We're just approving their request for a tax. So that might be a little onerous. I don't know. I don't know about that. You guys think about it and, that might not be feasible.
These new pieces that you included coming from the counties, are they counties close by? Are they counties way down east? Or
No, they're close by.
Close
The
up in the mountains.
furthest one that I got was Winston-Salem, because they still have volunteer fire. And they, when I talked to the School of Government, a couple, I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 months ago. One of the things that they said was, Forsyth County's having some real problems with their fire departments. You should probably call the county attorney and talk to them and see what the issues were. And then that'd be a good go by for you because they're having a lot of problems and they're revising all of their contracts. So he was a good resource to talk to. And his overall was volunteer firefighters and departments, you are restricted, in what you can do because you contract with them. They're independent because they're nonprofits. This is not county-run fire department. This is not county-owned property. One of the things that he said was, they specifically required that the county own the facility. I said, well, there's no way that our county is going to go buy back the properties that belong to these fire departments. That belongs to them. They've purchased it. We've appropriated money or they've raised money. That's not something we're going to do at this point. We're not bringing it in-house. It's not going to be a county, service. That's why we're contracting with them. And he understood that, coming from that angle. I mean, we're rural. We're not in a city area, but he said, unfortunately, the way that you enforce anything with your fire departments is through your contract. So that's why some of this stuff has been added, because it's the only way that we have to be able to do anything, or require anything for our departments.
Question, you were just saying the county doesn't own anything at the fire departments, but yet we restrict what they can use the taxpayers' money for, fire trucks, hoses, whatever. Do we know that the fire departments carry enough insurance on that fire truck or other vehicles that would, if something happened to it, the insurance would cover it? Or are they going to come back and say, we need more money because we underinsured?
Well, that's exactly what Garrison was asking about. How do we know? Well, we don't. And that's why we're going to make it part of this, that they would provide that certificate of insurance that proves that they have the insurance, but then what your limits are on the policy, because that certificate of insurance shows you that information.
Now, we'll get that and that'll go to you and you'll,
I'm thinking that'll go to April.
there goes your fishing this weekend.
Oh, we're not getting it this weekend. You can look at a certificate of insurance and it's pretty clear because it's going to show you your limits right there. That's just a one-page document that says, here's the insurance company that's doing the insuring, and then here's your limits on the policy. I think it also shows the deductible that's on the policy. And generally speaking, I think we've looked at them before because people using the fairgrounds, they're required to provide a certificate of insurance that proves that they have insurance for that event. It's the one page. It's the same thing that you'd be asking for in regards to the fire departments. So, and that's what we're asking for on the workers' comp. That's what we'd be asking for on a building, and then on vehicles. Vehicles might be a little different type of, I don't know if they issue a certificate of insurance. That might be a little bit of a different something coming from the insurance company, because I don't know if I've ever seen one for a car or a vehicle.
I was glad to know that all the stuff that you incorporated come from volunteer departments and not paid, because we're not competing with paid. We're all volunteers, they could have a totally different sight on things,
I think when you get that added in there, I like it already, but that'd be better.
Yeah, I agree, because then we're guaranteeing to the taxpayers that there's coverage on things that they paid for over the years. Like Timmy said, that's not just the fire department, that's taxpayers too that have helped. I know that there's a lot of money that's been, raised for different things, but yeah, it's taxpayers' money every year that goes for the service. So I think they should know that they're covered.
Up until the fire tax was passed, all departments fundraised about half or better of their budget.
Yep.
Because
All
it
the
wasn't-
time,
yeah,
all the time.
Years and years and years on back,
So I'm glad we
There's a
did
major investment out there from the communities.
I'm glad we did the fire tax, because it just makes it, now it's money that the fire department knows they're going to get, and they can bank on that money for, it's a district, you can have a tax on it. I mean, I know there are limitations for us because, you guys can vote to say you're not giving them any money for the district, but it's a way for them to know that there is money as long as they bring the required documentation. They get budgeted the money to provide the service and to pay for their equipment and things that they need. So, and the community then knows that they have fire service, that they're protected, their community's protected. So I think for us, we need to make sure that we are doing our job too, which is to make sure that the things that would affect the community, we're checking up on, that we're making sure that those services are provided and that they're letting us know that everything is being done in a proper manner so that we say that to the community, we can be sure. It's not just a contract. It's you agree to provide the services and we agree that we're going to collect that money for you so that you can provide the service.
How long did it take you to get that road up?
A little while because I had to go through the whole thing again. It's not just as simple as saying, oh yeah, I just changed this one section. I was pulling stuff from multiple counties because I wanted to make sure, did we hit everything that we need? If we're going to change this and we're making sure that we are covering all these things that we know we've had questions, a lot of questions about, we need to hit on that. So what I wanted to see was, what are some of the surrounding counties? What are they asking for? What do they require their departments to do? You know, how does their contract work? I was kind of surprised with Forsyth that it was a volunteer. I thought that was kind of crazy.
Outside the city limits probably is.
Yeah, but I just kind of figured, yeah, I just kind of, I don't know why I was thinking city. I'm like, oh, they're covered under the service, but apparently not.
Well, Surrey County, I know Mount Airy City is paid and everything else is volunteers.
That still gives them, though, they can still have districts, though. Yeah. Is the fire department part of the county or
Well,
the service is the
It's
county?
gonna be city.
Yeah.
Everything outside there is county level, I believe. What does everybody think about the audit? We ain't said a whole lot about that. That's gonna be 5,000, 6,000, I think we need to talk about that just a little bit. We got time here. Is that something we all wanna do, audit a year on up and above the county audit?
So we're not discussing the random audit every 5. This is for every department to be audited every year. That's what section O is saying.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So,
Every
yeah.
department or one out of the 5?
No, if you have a contract with us, you're providing us with that information, which you need to figure out, is that something you want or not? And then, as you said, how's that going to be paid for?
Man, speak up.
I'm good.
County pays for it, fire department pays for it.
Fire department.
It's a county request.
Yeah.
I think it's a good step towards transparency to ask them to participate in the audit. But at the same time, I don't think we want to place an undue, burden that they weren't expecting to have. I don't want to give them an unfunded mandate, There's a compromise somewhere.
I mean, we started out one way, we probably ought to continue on the same path.
We're gonna keep doing the rotation. But this is every year. All of them, I just don't think if I know that crowd, they ain't gonna wanna pay for that.
Wonder how much difference, I mean, what would it be per year? They give us a
10,000.
discount, I mean, doing.
No, I can tell you that. No, we won't get a discount. It costs $4,000 for our auditing firm to do the AUP right now on one fire department per year. So
It's a desk.
20,000 a year.
it's a
Different
desk
kind of
audit.
audit.
Now, that's not a full
We're
audit.
talking about a full
That's not-
audit
It is
here.
different from what we're stipulating.
Yeah, it's called agreed upon procedures, and I call it a desk audit, but it's pulling like loan documents. It is pulling the general ledger. It is pulling checking account information. It's pulling disbursements over $1,000, things like that.
It's really just a $16,000 difference because we're already doing 4,000.
Yeah, but a full audit is
It's gonna
probably
cost
going to
more than
be
4.
between 5,000 and 7,000.
Yeah.
Just going with what we pay and what I know other organizations pay, that's probably what it's going to be. It could be even up to $10,000.
What I was thinking. Probably already figured 10,000.
So,
Just doing layers and layers is what I believe. It's
so would
a
you
lot.
say, okay, if you want it, do you want it every year? Do you want it every other year? I mean, what are you going to require? I mean, I think it's a good practice for them to do, because then you have a third party who is making sure that they say that's where their money's going, then you know it is, because we're only doing one every 5 years, but it's not full audit. It's just a portion.
Why are we not doing the full audit on the 5 rotations? I mean,
That's just what the board decided to go with.
What's the total, roughly, the total amount we give to all 5 fire departments in a year's time?
$1 million.
How many?
$1 million.
$20,000 administrative fees, not a lot of money to be sure everything's
well, I agree with you.
handled properly.
I would be good with every other, to spread the cost to Ted, you know.
2 1 year and
That's
3 the
what I think
next. or
too,
what?
yeah.
It's good. If you do all of them, it's
We'd
going to
be
be
2 and 2, 'cause you're
50,000.
gonna
Split
be
it
doing
into
one.
2, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
That'd be the way it worked, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We got 1 on the 5 rotations, so you'd be 2 and 2. So you'd be looking at,
So this wouldn't replace the one that we are.
No, because it's just I mean, we could say that it would, but it's a full audit. All we do is just it's much smaller. So, I mean, you could say for that 1 year that it would just be what we did.
I mean,
You
the
know,
board
but-
can change it.
Right.
That was the discussion then, was not to do a full audit, but just do the agreed upon procedures that was recommended by our auditors. Because we didn't even know if any of the fire departments had even had an audit. Well, now we know that at least one had never had an audit done. So that's part of this process and trying to, figure out what the board wants.
Spending $1 million, like I said, 20,000 is probably good insurance.
Yeah, it's right at $1 million. Now that's spread, between the 5, and Laurel Springs gets the least.
Looking roughly 16,000, because we're already budgeted for 1.
if we can get it done for that.
And auditors are hard to come by right now too, so. We'll have to find us an auditor, possibly, because that's one thing that our auditors only had the time to do also was the AUP. They didn't have time to do that full audit.
So maybe if you said annually, it might be a bit onerous. You said every other year, it might be a little more feasible, one for an auditor, but then also on the cost. But then I think if you're going to do it every other year, it needs to be full audit, not just some simple process. Because if you're not getting it every year, maybe every year would be a little different, but if you're getting it every other year, then you want it to be a full look at, the books.
Full blown audit's gonna tell you everything.
Is this something the finance committee could look at and bring us something?
I don't think so.
What do you mean look at and bring?
Well, if you
Just look
have
at the
that
process
money
in general?
to add in this year's budget.
We would have to add, we'd have to do some type of budget amendment in the current year, if that's what you're saying. And it's
The
not
rest
in,
of us hadn't even seen the budget yet.
right, and it's not, at this point, not incorporated in next year's, so that would be something that we'd have to have an additional conversation about. Yeah. And I would talk to our auditors and see what their time frame is, and if they could do it, or if we'd have to employ somebody else to do it.
And see if the records that the fire departments are keeping is adequate to do what we're asking.
Right. Well,
I mean,
the first one was a success, We went through the process. There's a couple little bumps in the road, but we got over it, got what we needed. We got everything back from the auditors saying, yes, we see no issues. Here's what we found. Here's what we didn't find in those reports. So we're in the middle of the second one.
we've got time to think about it, I guess.
Yeah, I've got some notes, so if you guys think on it, just send me a message and I can adjust it and send it back out to everybody, you know. And I may just adjust some of the things we've already talked about now and then send it back and maybe put some highlights on things you might want to talk about or think about. And then I'll send you the old one so you can see the difference potentially in it.
I only have one more question, and I'll be done. Do we have any other language for remedy as the county in the event of noncompliance other than the beginning of section 4 that says it shall be paid quarterly following the end of the calendar quarter, subject to the following requirements? Do we have anything besides that that provides us remedy to say if you don't comply? So let's just say, for example, if somebody chooses not to comply with the audit mandated in the second quarter, is there any more language we could add or somewhere that I'm not seeing in the document that says what's going to happen or what our remedy is?
And the reason for that is you have a breach of contract. That's the only issue you run into here if it's not complied with. What's your option when you have a breach of contract? To sue. Is the county really going to sue its own volunteer fire department for the district? I think the answer to that is no. So really the only way for us to be able to enforce this is to have the metrics and say, we're holding your money until you complied. And they're not massive compliance requirements. I mean, audit might be a little bit more, compliance, focused. But I mean, otherwise, it's not anything that's major that we're asking for. But we felt like, that's the only way to enforce this contract at all. And that was one of the things, since I knew Forsyth was having so many issues. So, of course, my question to him is like, what are you doing? And he said, we don't really have any options. Our contract didn't really call for anything, which is why we're changing it, because we have no way to be able to enforce anything. And I think we did ask the fire marshal about that too. And there's really no way to do anything. It's unfortunate. And I don't really understand why the legislature hasn't looked at this before, but they consider it just to be private between the county and the department that they're funding. So that's the only thing we have. Then I can't imagine that we would sue one of our fire departments for a breach of our contract. That makes no sense. So this is the only option that we have. So that's why you don't see any other language. We don't really have any.
Anybody else got any more questions? Ready?
I'll follow up with you guys and I'll send you the updated version. I'll send you the old contract and then I'll highlight a couple sections I still want you to think about and let me know on, okay?
Sounds good. We appreciate all your work you've done.
I know you're strapped for time, but I guess we need to get done as quick as we can.
No, I will. Yeah. It's
Get
fresh
to-
in
get
my
to the fire
mind.
departments.
Yeah. I want to get it done because it's fresh in my mind. If I wait too long, I'll be like, what did we talk about?
right.
So no, I'm going to work on this tomorrow and try to get it out to you guys so you'll have it
Thank you. That was good
while
work.
the iron's hot.
Good work.
Nobody has anything else for a motion to adjourn?
Someone.
All in favor?
Thank you all.
Adjourn.
Can I get a couple of signatures while everybody's here real quick? The high school project.
Got a black pen.
Get a good report the other day?
Yes,
Did you get a good report the other day?
Yeah.
I said no, and I said, because that.
She could walk. She
What
had a
they
good
think is
knee.
that they're just thinking that
Is that her
they'll
problem or
get
needs?
overwhelmed by people that don't feel that they're welcome. That's what they are.
Every
You're a popping game. Wow.
What in, man?
Can't see.
Subdivision.
Do nothing about that.